He handles the insanity of my life with grace, with loving.
They were the Hollywood couple everyone rooted for. Glamorous, grounded, and madly in love. But after nearly a decade of romance, a child, and a fairy tale engagement, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom have officially called it quits. What really tore them apart this time? Was it the pressure of fame, the cracks hidden behind closed doors, or something neither of them ever saw coming? Because what looked like a picture-perfect love story might have been quietly falling apart for years.
And I've been in it where I've dated guys that I'm like, oh my God, you're so intimidated by my success.
And they don't even know how to verbalize it.
And the signs, they were there, if you knew where to look. In Hollywood, sparks fly all the time, but few flames last. That's why when Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom were spotted getting unusually cozy at a 2016 Golden Globes after-party, no one thought much of it at first. But this wasn't just another fleeting flirtation in a sea of champagne and flashing cameras. Something clicked between them that night. Something real. Onlookers described the interaction as electric, with Katy and Orlando locked in deep conversation, laughing in their own bubble, totally oblivious to the crowd around them.
Fell in love with Katy was like, I didn't really, she hates when I say this, so I have to word it carefully, but her music was everywhere, right?
Still, in a world where every look becomes a headline, the whispers didn't take long to start. Was it just a party fling or the start of something serious? Just days later, they were seen again, this time in a more private, telling setting. Backstage at the absolute brightness of Leonard Pelkey, a one-man play in LA. No cameras, no red carpet, just a quiet moment between two stars who clearly couldn't stay away from each other. But the biggest sign came when Katy joined Orlando and his young son Flynn, whose mom is model Miranda Kerr, at a birthday party for Robert Downey Jr.'s son.
That no one knows, and we both understand, I think, we both meet each other with understanding where we came from.
That wasn't just a casual +1 moment. That was Orlando inviting Katy into his inner circle, into his family, and she went. Suddenly, this wasn't just two A-listers crossing paths. This was intentional, personal, vulnerable. By the time spring rolled around, the whispers had turned into confirmation. A source close to the couple told E! News, Katy likes how down-to-earth Orlando is. She calls him her boyfriend. And in an industry built on image, being down-to-earth might have been the exact thing she was searching for. But even in those early stages and when everything felt new and magical, the cracks in the surface were already forming.
You've been in relationships where, and I've been in it, where I've dated guys that I'm like, oh my God, you're so intimidated by my success.
They skipped red carpets, kept things low-key, moved fast, but quietly. It wasn't the typical celebrity PR romance. And that might have been the first clue. Because while the public saw fire and fun behind the scenes, two strong-willed people were learning just how complicated real connection could be. And it wouldn't take long for those complications to bubble up, in the most public way possible. By mid-2016, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom were no longer just Hollywood's cutest maybe couple. They were official. But not in the usual over-the-top way celebrities tend to broadcast their relationships. There was no red carpet debut, no glossy magazine cover story.
Big celebration. I'm all about like big, fun, exotic, great celebrations. So hopefully soon.
Instead, Katy posted a single playful photo. The two of them lounging side by side on the steps of the Hotel du Cap Eden Rock, just miles from the Cannes Film Festival. No caption, no fanfare, just a vibe. The message was clear. We're together, but on our terms. Behind the scenes, things were moving fast. They were taking trips with Orlando's son Flynn, going to Disneyland Shanghai, celebrating holidays together, and even shutting down rumors with a united front. When tabloids tried to stir drama, claiming Orlando had been spotted getting cozy with Selena Gomez in Las Vegas.
I love Katy Perry. She gave me a song for my second album, so.
Which one was that?
It's called Rock God.
Katy didn't lash out. She didn't hide. She shut it down with a single tweet. Instead of giving energy and eyeballs to dumb conspiracy, check out how cool this is, she wrote. linking to an article about Orlando's charity work. Selena even retweeted it. Drama. Dismissed. To the public, it looked like they had it all figured out. Mature, private, and unbothered by outside noise. But behind that polished surface, something was brewing. They were celebrating holidays together. Thanksgiving with both Katy's family and Orlando's son. She threw him a surprise 40th birthday party in Palm Springs. They were clearly close, but also clearly resisting the spotlight.
Feeling safe, seen, and celebrated. I want to feel safe. So in terms of my relationship.
And then came the Oscars. In February 2017, they attended Vanity Fair's exclusive after-party. They posed for photos inside, dressed to kill, but once again avoided the red carpet together. Something felt off. And just days later, the rumors exploded. Their reps confirmed it. Katy and Orlando were taking respectful, loving space at this time. It sounded calm, controlled, even loving. But space in Hollywood is usually code for something else. Was it the pressure of blending lives, the strain of busy schedules, or something deeper that neither of them was ready to admit? What made the breakup more confusing was what came next.
It's the way Orlando Bloom is all freaking smiles in the pictures of Jeff Bezos and Lauren.
They didn't delete photos. They didn't unfollow each other. They didn't throw public shade or go on tell-all tours. In fact, they insisted they were still friends. And maybe they were, but one thing was clear. Something in that fairy tale cracked. And for a while, it seemed like that might be the end. But then they came back. By the time summer 2017 rolled around, Katy and Orlando were supposed to be over. Their breakup had been quiet, respectful, even classy by Hollywood standards. But when they were spotted at an Ed Sheeran concert that August, cuddled up and kissing like nothing had ever changed, the story flipped.
Are they back together? I don't know. I don't think so.
Whatever space they had taken clearly didn't last. There was no dramatic announcement, no grand comeback post. Just two people pulled back together as if distance had only made the connection stronger. Over the next few months, subtle clues confirmed what fans had already guessed. Katy and Orlando were back on, and this time they weren't tiptoeing around it. In April 2018, they did something no one expected. They flew to Rome and met the Pope. Yes, that Pope. The couple joined spiritual leaders, world figures, and changemakers at the Vatican, greeting Pope Francis as part of a conference on meditation and consciousness. For a duo known more for red carpets than religion, it was a surreal pivot, but one that symbolized something deeper.
My darling. And my manager, Steve. It's a great day.
This wasn't a fling. This was soul-searching, and they were doing it together. Just a month later, Katy flew to London to watch Orlando take the stage in the West End revival of Killer Joe, showing up not as a celebrity guest, but as a supportive partner. By September, they were finally ready to do something they had avoided for years: walk a red carpet together. At the gala for the Global Ocean in Monaco, the couple posed side by side, glamorous, united, and visibly glowing. After years of avoiding the spotlight, this was their statement. We're here. We're real. And as if to seal the deal, just weeks before Katy's birthday in October 2018, they stepped out again.
And it shifts and it changes and it settles for everyone. There's maybe a couple.
This time for the Amphar Gala in Los Angeles. No drama, no distance. Just the quiet kind of commitment that doesn't need headlines. It was the calm before something big. Because on Valentine's Day 2019, Orlando got down on one knee. The proposal wasn't a paparazzi setup or a scripted Instagram stunt. It was private, emotional, and very them. Katy shared a photo of the flower-shaped engagement ring, captioning it simply, "Full bloom." After all the false starts, the breakups, and the quiet reunions, they were finally engaged. But fairy tales don't always follow the script. And while the ring sparkled and the smiles were real, The next chapter would test them in ways neither of them saw coming. In March 2020, Katy Perry surprised the world. Not with a new album, but with a baby bump. She revealed her pregnancy in the music video for Never Worn White, singing about vulnerability, love, and the kind of commitment that goes beyond words. For fans, it was shocking, intimate, and raw. A new side of Katy, and a new chapter for both her and Orlando. 6 months later, their daughter, Daisy Dove Bloom, was born. And just like that, the couple that had spent years navigating fame, distance, and the pressure of the spotlight was now navigating diapers, sleepless nights, and the terrifying beauty of parenthood. For Katy, who had once been defined by power anthems and stadium tours, Daisy was more than just a baby. She was, as Katy put it, the unconditional love I was always searching for. In an April 2024 interview with E! News, Katy spoke with disarming honesty. She is such our gift, and she is such a blessing. What she's given me is wholeness, happiness, and just true, full love. It wasn't just a sentimental quote. You could feel it in her music, in her interviews, in the way she talked about life. Motherhood cracked her open and rebuilt her. And for Orlando, it was a transformation too. Already a father to his son Flynn from his previous relationship with Miranda Kerr, becoming a girl dad brought out something new in him. Katy gushed about watching him step into the role, calling it one of the most meaningful parts of their relationship. During a September 2024 episode of the Call Her Daddy podcast, she said, "One of his strengths is that when I crumble, he can step in and be that anchor." That admission revealed more than she might have realized. Because for all her strength, all her independence, Katy had found herself needing a partner, not just romantically, but emotionally. She continued, "Because I'm usually just alpha, I don't need any help. But actually, I do need help, and I do need a partner." In that moment, you could sense the truth beneath the surface. Parenting brought them closer, but it also exposed their deepest patterns. The need for control, the pressure to be strong, the quiet hope that the other person will catch you when you fall. They were no longer just lovers, they were parents, and that changes everything. For a while, it seemed like the shift had made them stronger, more united, more real. But in the years that followed, the very thing that brought them deeper may have also pushed them closer to the edge. Because parenting doesn't just reveal who you are, it reveals who you aren't ready to become. And for Katy and Orlando, the cracks that once led to quiet breakups were beginning to show again. For a while, it seemed like Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom had finally found their rhythm, balancing parenthood, careers, and love like seasoned pros. They weren't in the headlines every week. They weren't flaunting their romance on red carpets. They were stable, quiet, settled. But in Hollywood, quiet doesn't always mean content. By late 2021, fans started to notice something strange. The wedding they'd once talked about and the big, exotic celebration that Katy had teased still hadn't happened. In a 2022 interview on The Drew Barrymore Show, Katy admitted there was a plan, but that the location was challenging. It sounded like a logistical issue. But was it really? Because years had passed since the engagement, and while they were building a family, the milestone that typically cements a future together kept slipping further away. And then came the distance. Not just physical, but emotional. In 2023, their public appearances grew sparse. The photos that once felt playful now felt posed, polished, almost too perfect. There were no scandals, no dramatic unfollowings, just a subtle shift in energy, the kind you feel more than see. But the cracks began to show in the things they did say publicly. In a September 2024 interview with Apple Music, Katy gave fans a glimpse into their private dynamic. "Orlando and I, when we argue kinda hot and fast and then cool really quickly," she said. "It's like, la la la, I love you, let's move on." It was honest, real, even relatable. But it also hinted at the emotional volatility they were navigating behind closed doors. Because love doesn't fade in a single fight. It frays over time, in the silences, the near misses, the recurring patterns you swore you'd break, but didn't. And while Katy described their arguments as quick to cool, the buildup, the frequency, was left unspoken. What fans saw was a couple trying to stay grounded, but what was happening underneath? Career schedules weren't helping. Katy was preparing for her Lifetime's tour, a demanding global push. Orlando was filming, traveling, juggling his own commitments. The very success that once brought them together was now pulling them apart. By the time they showed up at Wimbledon in July 2023, kissing in the stands, fans were relieved. It felt like confirmation. They're still good. They're still solid. But looking back, that moment might have been one last public display. A quiet reassurance, more for themselves than anyone else. Because by early 2024, the distance was no longer just emotional. It was geographic. And love, no matter how real, struggles to survive when the people in it are constantly passing each other midair. What had once been a passionate, anchored partnership was slowly turning into parallel lives. Katy Perry has never been one to shy away from owning her power. From chart-topping anthems to unapologetic performances, she built her career and her image on confidence, control, and independence. But when she opened up in a September 2024 episode of the Call Her Daddy podcast, fans saw a very different side. One that didn't sing about roaring or fireworks, but about fragility, pressure, and the quiet ache of needing someone to lean on. One of Orlando's strengths, she admitted, is that when I crumble, he can step in and be that anchor. It was a moment of raw honesty, revealing a dynamic far deeper than celebrity headlines usually show. Katy, the self-proclaimed alpha, was finally admitting what so many strong people quietly feel, that being powerful doesn't mean being invincible. She continued, "'Cause I'm usually just alpha, I don't need any help. But actually, I do need help. And for as strong as I am, I was like, no, I do need a partner." At face value, it sounded like growth, like love, like balance. But look closer and those words hint at something else too. Exhaustion. A slow-burning tension between the image she projected and the reality she was living. Because in a partnership where one person is constantly the anchor and the other is quietly crumbling, something begins to shift. The roles become rigid. The emotional give and take becomes uneven. And over time, that imbalance can wear even the strongest couples down. And for Katy and Orlando, it wasn't just emotional. It was structural. She was launching massive creative projects, music inspired by motherhood, a tour built around reinvention, and even a space mission with an all-female crew. Orlando, too, was deep in his own work, his own world. They were both evolving, individually, separately. And while Katy praised him publicly, calling him steady, supportive, solid, the subtext was hard to ignore. She was changing, growing, realizing what she needed and what she might no longer have. Because sometimes the thing that keeps you grounded also keeps you stuck. And sometimes loving someone deeply doesn't mean you're meant to keep building a life together forever. In the end, Katy's admission may have been more than a loving tribute. It might have been a farewell letter in disguise. Because the alpha was tired, and the anchor was drifting, and soon, the quiet imbalance between them would spill out into something the public could no longer ignore. For months, the signs were there. Subtle, quiet, easy to miss if you weren't looking closely. Katy was deep into her Lifetime's tour, a whirlwind schedule that had her constantly on the move. Orlando was back to jet-setting, filming, traveling, showing up solo at public events. But it wasn't until June 26, 2025, that everything came into sharp focus. Orlando Bloom showed up alone to one of the year's biggest social events. The lavish Italian wedding of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. No Katy, no family, no carefully timed photo ops. Just Orlando, solo. It didn't take long for the speculation to end. Multiple outlets confirmed what fans had quietly feared. After nearly a decade of UPS downs and everything in between, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom had broken up. This time, there were no PR statements, no Instagram posts, no respectful, loving space like in 2017. Just silence. And somehow that silence spoke volumes. Because unlike the first breakup, which felt like a pause, this one felt final. What made it all the more surreal was how sudden it seemed on the surface. Just months earlier, in April, Katy had completed a groundbreaking spaceflight with an all-female crew. Orlando and their daughter Daisy were right there, cheering her on, celebrating a historic moment. But that image, the proud partner, the supportive dad, may have masked a deeper truth, that they were already living in different emotional orbits. Sources close to the couple hinted that the split had been brewing for a while, that the distance, both physical and emotional, had become harder to ignore. That as Katy threw herself into her art and Orlando into his travels, the emotional glue holding them together quietly dissolved. And what's haunting is how much of it happened in plain sight. The late red carpet avoidance, the solo appearances, the lack of a wedding after 5 years of engagement, the emotional confessions. Individually, they were just moments. Together, they told a story. A story not of betrayal or scandal, but of two people growing at different speeds, in different directions. A story of love that was real, but not enough. Because sometimes, even the most beautiful relationships have an expiration date. And the people we love the most aren't always the ones we're meant to keep. When a nearly decade-long relationship ends, especially one lived in the spotlight, the question isn't just why, it's also, what now? For Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom, the answer is more complicated than most. Because their story doesn't end with bitterness, scandal, or tabloid drama. It ends with a child. Daisy Dove Bloom is 4 years old, bright-eyed, wide-smiled, and the living symbol of everything Katy and Orlando built together. And according to those close to the couple, co-parenting is now the new mission. They may no longer be partners in love, but they're still partners in life, in parenting, in showing up for their daughter, and in preserving the kind of peace that most exes in Hollywood never managed to find. Katy has spoken openly about how Daisy reshaped her identity. "She is our gift," she said. "She's the love I was always searching for." That kind of love doesn't end just because the relationship does. And creatively, motherhood has only deepened her voice. Her music in recent years has pulled less from the glitter and more from the real, touching on wholeness, balance, emotional clarity. With the Lifetimes tour in full swing and whispers of a new album built around personal evolution, it's clear Katy isn't retreating. She's rising. Again. As for Orlando, he's remained grounded in fatherhood, adventure, and spiritual growth. He's spoken before about the clarity parenting brings and how love means showing up even when things aren't perfect. And he's still showing up, just in a new way. The world may have expected wedding bells, fairy tale endings, and red carpet happily ever afters. But instead, they're giving us something quieter, and maybe even stronger. Grace. They're not fighting. They're not performing. They're just moving forward. And while fans still hold on to hope that maybe this isn't the final chapter, that maybe time will pull them back again, the truth is, no one knows. Because if their story has proven anything, it's that love is rarely simple, rarely linear, and rarely over when you think it is. For now, they're walking separate paths, but they're still side by side in the ways that matter most. And that, in its own way, might be the most mature human kind of love there is. Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom were never just another celebrity couple. They were opposites that somehow fit. A rock star and a romantic, a dreamer and an anchor, navigating fame, heartbreak, and fatherhood with more grace than most. For nearly a decade, their love story kept fans hoping, believing, rooting for a fairy tale ending. And in many ways, they got one. Just not the kind you find in movies. Because love, real love, isn't always red carpets and wedding rings. Sometimes it's two people meeting in the middle for a while, helping each other grow, heal, and transform before letting go. Sometimes the greatest success isn't staying together forever. It's knowing when to walk away with kindness. And maybe that's what makes this breakup feel different. There's no villain, no scandal, just two strong people learning that love evolves and that letting go can be an act of love too. So where does that leave us? Wondering if they'll come back together again? Hoping for a reunion down the road? Or finally accepting that some stories are meant to change shape, not end? Whatever the truth is, one thing's clear. They may be each other's one that got away, but they'll always share something bigger than romance. A daughter, a legacy, a chapter they wrote together, and that's a love story worth remembering.